I don't know if this chapter was a crazy chapter or if it's a chapter that makes people crazy. There was something mind blowing this chapter. And I'm gonna confess that I was wrong. I said that last chapter was the fuse and that this would be the explosion, at least the start of it, at least action, let's say. But I was wrong. This is part two of the fuse. But there is just so much more information, so much more context that comes with this part two that makes the chapter so hard, just heated up that there is just, we have to get into it. Now, we pick up where we left off as the characters open the door, and right behind the door is a pathway. So, what I read last time about it being the way to the upper floors is right. Now, beyond the pathway, they see stairs, and the stairs are located on the outermost part of the boat. It's just this beautiful, but in a really scary way, in an agrophobic type of way, landscape of stairs so small in a scale so big, and just pillars that are of a great magnitude just attaching both sides of it. And it's just such a beautiful page that was just so well portrayed, but it also implicates such a technical aspect of the boat that was actually thought about by the author. That was just the technical part of it. And there is a technical part of it that actually plays in the story. As we find out, they're in the outermost layer just before getting outside the boat, and there is also the sewage that is getting smelled up by things and such and such. And when they smell the sewage, it reminds them of home, and they just talk about it. But then Ajao mentions that the sewage of 200,000 people is getting by this part, the outermost layer, but also the underground. But the sewage actually grows between 4 and 5, level 4 and level 5. By going there, they actually go on top of level 5, which is a really interesting point as a classist statement that the sewage is above the third five passengers. But also it implicates another thing, that the sewage is being taken care of by the mafia. So the mafia, Ziyu and Cha'ar, have some monopoly over the sewage. But as they find out, Nobunaga pointed out that he's pretty sure you guys don't actually take care of it yourself. You get subcontractors. You get contractors to do the dirtier work. But then, in the way he said it, he had meaning in it, and Tajao picked up on what he was dropping down. And that was that the subcontractors don't really have to retail everything else, since they are sort of freelancing it. They can have a greater margin of freedom in how they operate, so they don't have to declare themselves. But then that means that that's a perfect position for Hailey, and Tajao realizes it, as Nobunaga points it out, and they realize that maybe the Hailey is actually using the same sewage system that is owned by Cha'ar and Hailey and Ziyu to actually do the dispensing of the bodies, and the whole culling is getting done there. As Nobunaga realizes it, he says, okay, well, I gotta go back then. I can't be going forward. He was already having struggle with his sword, and actually, apparently he forged a new sword, probably by doing some conjuration. And they say that it's a fast job, and that gets me worried, but anyway, that's not the important part. The important part is Nobunaga is going back on his feet to maybe catch up to some of the killing and see if they can find the killing spot down there. As then Finks and Phaeton will be going forward with Tajao to the upper floors. The separation got me a bit worried, as we see the panel where they go each their way seems a bit of ill omen. As we go forward from there, we actually catch up to the ZU, as we find out that the oyster that was consumed by Heinrich seems to have transformed back into its original form, which I do not know the implications, because that aspect is not really developed. It's just showing us that it has gone back to its true form. But then, yes, we go back to Heinrich himself talking to Zakuro, And they talk about how the crowd is getting bigger because, indeed, since they are on the third floor, Hulkenberg's funeral would be going through there soon. And they're wondering where Lynch is at. And as they're talking about, he was a bit distracted that he couldn't question the Haley soldiers when they attacked them in the first place. Another member of their group points up, seemingly distressed. Well, there comes bad news. They find out Lynch is dead. The soldier that found her and recognized her as a member of the Haley is saying that this was a crazy job done by a pro. And so the people say, oh, okay, he must have been a hitman from the Haley. Henry is thinking that. We'll take care of the body, such and such, and they go from there. But they seem to be having discussions about the whole incident, casually actually. Zakuro is telling his part of the piece. It seems to be maybe something is wrong with how it went down. And I pointed it out last time that in the way that Bonole Lynch, the way that Bonole Lynch handled herself didn't seem Lynch-like. How he was worried about Zakuro, how he was worried about the power of the enemy, and how she asked for reinforcement. I said that that doesn't seem like her, and we could see it from when she actually woke up, and the difference with when she woke up when it was the fake waking up. And Zakuro points it out that she seemed a bit different. That doesn't seem right like her. So they speculate and they end up figuring out that it could only be the whole thought process makes sense from a narrative point. It makes sense. But when they find out, actually theorize that it might have been the Phantom Troop, they are decided that if it is, they will be taking their revenge. They can't let it slide no matter who it is. And I can just appreciate that. But that also makes a new enemy for the people of the troop. But as they say that with so much determination, and they were actually pretty casual before that, but here we actually get a true look into their feelings and how they actually feel about the death of Lynch. And that's when we switch to Krollo's perspective, as he's using a new ability that is really interesting, that seems to be a conjured phone that allows him to just call up somebody based on criterias, and criterias give you a number, and the number you call, there's a dial system that will give you information about the person if they are in range, that you can just go access them. He uses the ability, it rings, but it says that the person he's looking for is not in the area. And he points out something really interesting about how even in the crowd this size, he can't find that person. But then he says, I come to think of it, it was the same back at Heaven's Arena, which means that he used this ability in Heaven's Arena, which I'm not sure if it was on Hisoka per se. Maybe it was then when he was trying to find Hisoka as he was dead to make sure, or something of the sort, but I don't think that is what is being pointed out. Maybe the person that he's looking for on the boat seems to be the same person that might have been on Heaven's Arena. That's how I'm seeing it. Well, he's looking for somebody anyway, and looking for that somebody also gets into what we were talking about last chapter about the treasures, and we find out that it's actually a special treasure, sacred special treasures from the royal family, which seems to have mystic powers. So he's thinking about maybe going to the first floor because he's not feeling like the sacred treasures he's looking for are on this floor. He might want to move to another floor on the first floors and such, but he's a bit worried about how there is so much Nen battle going around and people hiding in the shadows and just such danger, but he might have to risk it. And this is when we learn about two of the other secret treasures. If we didn't learn about them before, we knew about the urn, we saw the urn, but we didn't know about the mummified monk and the blade of succession. The mummified monk seems to be taking care of overlooking the whole succession war, which means the technicalities of it, probably I would say just surveilling, and probably the hands that killed the Kasho are probably from this ability. The blade seems to be for after the succession war. The starting item would be the urn, then the maintenance of the game seems to be the monk, and the end item would be the blade. Those are things Krollo wants. As he says he wants them, he seems to want them for the ability that might be inside of them. Or at least what I'm getting from it is that the abilities or just stealing these items will evolve his own ability of skill hunter and will give him more power, or at least give him the ability to steal another ability that seems to have that power to kill Hisoka, or just that greater power. And he's talking about this ability as in he needs to seal a national treasure to level up his ability just so he can get this other ability, then still have to use his own conditions that he used to put in action. His conditions stay the same, but stealing these items will be greater. He will give him more power for a skill hunter. But we can also tell that Crollo is not really feeling himself. He seems to be having this internal struggle about either finding the treasure, which he seems to be really focused on, and dealing with Hisoka. Those two emotions, and he even seems out of it as he talk about patience is a virtue, but at the same time he really wants to get it. He knows that he's running a risk of, when he gets to tier 1, of running into Hisoka, and that's the battle whose conclusion is not confirmed, but he's willing to take the risk. And he seems to think that, well, that's the thing. We get into this really special page with this great art again about the alternative is already in place and the spider will go on. And I think this is him sort of having this out of his state of mind, as in he really does not care about himself. He really doesn't consider him as much as he considers the spider, the image of the spider, and what the spider represents. Even through the death, he's not processing it, and his way of processing it is putting it all on making the spider immortal or eternal, has to say, because he really did. Even before, he didn't seem to really care about his own death, but now it seems that beyond not caring about his own death, he is looking madly. This page is unhinged. That piece of, he's really looking to make the spider eternal. Even as he says, even if he should die, the idea that instill fear of the spider that I designed, that will stay. Right as he says that, we switch up, of course, to Hulkenberg being transported by his followers. Crollo rings it again, and apparently there is a match, and it specifies that although we found the person you're looking for, he's not here, he's not on this floor. But this is happening right as it's about to go down, because we know that something is about to go down on this event. And Crollo's here. Heinrich seems to be not too far from here, and also is not feeling right about what happened to Lynch, and might be a new enemy of the spider. Nobunaga is alone, going down, and might have to fight the 3 new Haley members that upgraded. Finks and Phaeton seem to be going up, but there might be some changes where they are getting up there. Well, it's a crazy chapter. It's a crazy chapter, giving us some more details about secret treasures, about evolving skill hunter, about new abilities that he might get access to, and also just a crazy depth of Crollo's mentality, as he really seems to be processing it, how Shalnark and Kortupi died and such and such. It's just a great chapter though, not gonna lie. No action, don't care. Really, no action, I don't even care. It's just such a great story, and that would be the chapter. I might have to, of course, address the other aspects in more detail, but as of now, that would be a great place to stop.